Namaste. Sanatana Dharma and Yoga. Today is the International Yoga Day, being 21st June, I think 2015, it was declared. But it's interesting that the date on which it has been declared to be the International Yoga Day also happens to be the day on which Arya was declared. It was not released. The first issue came out on 15th August, 1914. But the declaration, because you have to send a pre-publication thing and people have to, those who want to contribute or those who want to subscribe to the journal, this declaration was made on 21st June, 1914. So this has not been done obviously consciously, but the fact that the two dates coincide is a sign of one of the actions, many actions, but one of the actions of the supramental force working in creation. Why I say so with regard to yoga is when we read the synthesis in the very first issue, the first page of synthesis of yoga. Today we have the book as the synthesis of yoga, where Sri Aurobindo in the Arya speaks about the world today. It's like somebody is watching from the Himalayan heights or maybe galactic heights about all that is going on. And he is saying that the world today presents like a cauldron of media, where all kinds of things are being shredded and once again their potential for future utility is being explored. And he says among them, one of the things among them is yoga, Indian yoga. And he says, however, yoga, which is a child of antiquity, ancient times, immemorial ages, still must rediscover itself before it can be truly useful. Otherwise, the name is bound to it is stepping out of the mystic caves and going out into the world. So we see that this declaration which Sri Aurobindo makes in 1914 started coming true from 1960 onwards, which is after the supramental manifestation. We see that yoga became a household word, apparently or strangely through the back door. Well, in America, research was done on yoga. And after yoga and meditation, yoga meaning thereby certain asanas, their benefits, and meditation, and the scientists confirmed that yes, it has benefits. So it caught the imagination of people, and from there we see that it has systematically trickled more and more. And today we have the International Yoga Day, where the world celebrates, as per the United Nations Assembly declaration, it has been declared as the International Yoga Day. So the first part of the prophecy is fulfilled. But this is the second part, that it must first discover itself. And that's where people need to be careful that this is the beginning, not the end of the journey of yoga in the world. So what really is yoga? So there has never been an age of mankind when yoga was not given to man. So when we turn toward the origins of yoga, nowadays modern writers will say it is Patanjali who gave the yoga. But obviously this is, yoga is way back. What Patanjali did was to codify. He brought out, he was trying to synthesize the different ways of life, and thereby he gave the Ashtanga Yoga, which is a codification. He codified that step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. That's how, the yoga can be practiced, and that became very popular, very much it caught the mind of the race, because it gives you a certain steps through which you move. And in those steps, asana and pranayam are only two limbs which come in between. So very often people take it that asana is synonymous as yoga. No, in fact yoga, Patanjali's Ashtanga Yoga, it starts with yam niyam, which is I won't say near impossible, but extremely difficult for anyone to practice. So the very first qualification for yoga, it becomes a non-starter. Why? Because purification is so fundamentally important to any yogic process. Because yoga is a means of the limited human consciousness to unite with the infinite. Can it bear the onrush of the infinite? Can it enter into the infinite without losing its balance, its hold? Because it's like takes away all these systems and props, mental props, beliefs, non-beliefs, on which crutches on which the human consciousness stands, within which it is tied. It opens the bars of a prison. to utter freedom. So while the sky is beautiful, but flying in the skies can be very intimidating. So that's the whole challenge of yoga, and therefore yama and niyama, some kind of purification, which is important in every yoga. Only in Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, we see certain 5 yamas. Yama is restraint, things not to be done. Niyam, or things which are to be done. So there is a list of things to be done. It's like a moral and ethical purification, which it speaks about. Then there is asana and pranayama to stabilize or strengthen, keep the body and the life force moving in good health in a harmonious way. Why? Because the real yoga will begin now, and it will begin with pratyahar, withdrawing of consciousness from the outside world. Then you have the dharna, now holding. You have withdrawn the consciousness from outside world. But where do you fix it? Because normally consciousness is flowing outward. So I was just speaking this morning to someone that this human body is described in one of the Puranas as a city with 9 gates. So we have the 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 nostrils, 1 nose and 1 mouth, 7 gates. Then the organ of reproduction and the organ of excretion. These are the 9 gates through which the consciousness flows outside. And it fixes itself on the sense objects. This is the usual tendency. And why it does that? There is a different metaphysical foundation behind it, but we need not go into that. So this is how the human body is constituted, and the consciousness is constantly flowing outward. So it has to be withdrawn inside first of all, if we have to really practice yoga. And that process of withdrawing inside is described like a turtle or a tortoise withdraws its limbs back into the shell. So why does it withdraw? By doing it, it becomes immune, impervious to all the attacks. So that's the beauty of the tortoise, very slow moving, and whether it can beat a hare or not in a race, but it can certainly beat the most tenacious predator simply by the fact that it knows how to withdraw its limbs inside. So that's why that's one of its specialties. And this process of withdrawing consciousness from outside is called as pratyahar. And then ahar literally means taking in. So from there comes, ahar is not food, but all that we take inside. So pratyahar. But then it has to be fixed inside. So there the Purana says that not only this city has 9 gates which are outside, there are 2 gates which are inside. The Purana says 1, but we can use the word 2, through which we can meet the owner of the house, of the city. So whether we call it a city or a house, where we can meet. He is dwelling in a sanctum sanctorum. Just like in a big company, many workers are working, but they do not know who the owner is. They have heard the name. So we are like that. There are many, many workers working within this body whom we call as the gods. There are 33 million gods. For each process there is a god. Entire Vedic yoga use this process of invoking the gods, their powers, to make the body function better and better, to make the mind more luminous and bright, to even fashion this chariot, to even fashion immortality. We have Ribhus, artisans of immortality. We have Twastri, many of these gods. So that's one. So there are many managers who are managing the affairs. But only the highest, top-ranking managers, they know the owner. So we have the Trinity or quaternary, depends upon how we look at it, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva and Krishna. They have the utter privy and corresponding feminine powers, the deities. So, without their grace, that's how the Vedic yoga goes through the gods. You cannot reach that point where you know the owner. But most of the workers and we ourselves, we are least bothered about it. We are happy to receive some crumbs, some wages for working here, for dwelling in this city. And the time comes when we have to leave it and go to another city. That's what is the process of transmigration, which is an evolutionary process. Now, where does yoga step in all this? So, yoga steps in that, supposing we begin to wonder, how can I meet the owner, the creator, who has brought this universe into existence? So, here the theory of yoga comes, or the practice of yoga comes, is based on this fact that in man there is a possibility of creation meeting the creator. So, man is one of the creations, one of the creatures. But in him, there is the dwelling of the Creator within man, and there is a possibility of meeting the Creator, and thereby many things can happen after that. One of them is he can enter into utter freedom, or as Sri Aurobindo says, he can actually change this earthly life into a better, diviner figure of the Creator himself, what he has, the original plan in his mind. So, this process of creation joining the Creator is what is yoga. And we do not know the Creator, we are still searching for him. So, Sri Aurobindo uses the word subconsciously, we are still engaged in yoga. So, how we are searching for the Creator? Unconsciously, we are all wanting that ultimate power, that ultimate knowledge. We are seeking it through books, we are seeking it in human beings, we are seeking it here, there, in science, technology, in several places. We also want that ultimate bliss, and we seek it, through a number of things, and yet we do not find it. We are seeking that perfect love, and yet we do not find it. We are looking for that stable basis of truth, but we do not find it, because everything that we find as truth turns out to be only a step towards some ultimate truth. Truth, by definition, is that which is the last bedrock of existence, where there is no degradation or degeneration. It's the stable basis. So we are unable to find it, yet we are seeking. We seek it, as I said, in various ways. And we get frustrated and we again try, strive. So this is how the journey continues of subconscious yoga. But a time comes when a human being understands that within the human sphere, everything is limited. It takes sometimes great pains to understand this simple lesson, which is so obvious. So that everything is limited, everything is there. Everything, call it and it is there, and yet it is limited. It's almost like a shadow play where you pick up something and you believe that by picking up a replica of Taj Mahal, you pick up a vigrah of even some god or something else, you have found the original. But you learn that no, this is not the original. The original cannot be accommodated even in the house. So we find things, and yet it is, as it is called, adha adhura. So we are leading half existence. Why? Because we are carrying a document whose one half is here, the other half is elsewhere. So we are like people who are carrying an inheritance. Inheritance is unlimited. The debit card or credit card, the credit card, okay. But credit card is there with the 2 or 3 important letters cut off. So we have the number, everything is there, but we cannot apply it. We know that it has been given to us by our papa, and it has unlimited amount of bliss, unlimited love, unlimited wisdom, unlimited power, everything. But we can't use it because the critical 3 letters, let's put those 3 letters as A, O, Ma, Om. Okay, the key is missing, the central key. So we are looking for that missing piece, the chip, to join together. Then the life can be fulfilled. So this is the basic theory of yoga, that our life can only be fulfilled by joining the Creator. Without that, whatever we may do within this framework will always be incomplete. So let's come back to the question, where did it all begin? Since yoga is a way of joining the Creator, and there is no age in which yoga never existed, because he has always given this path in various ways. Many of the paths have been lost because there was no documentation. And there are perhaps many more paths which individuals are following without knowing that they are into yoga. So when we use the word path, we are only talking about standardized paths. So where did it all begin? The first authentic place where we find the beginnings of yoga is very interesting. It's not there on Wikipedia. It's not Patanjali. Patanjali comes much later. Yoga is given to man with the origin of creation by the Creator himself. So when Shri Krishna is asked by Arjuna that, what is all this you are teaching to me? He says, this is not the first time I am teaching to you. So whom did you teach it earlier? And he expects some human name. And Shri Krishna says, I gave it to the sun god, Vivaswan. Oh, Vivaswan. He is the sun which, moves around this soul and gives light and energy. All creation is, sun is the symbol of the Creator in the material universe. Because if you see, sun is the one because of whom, because of the heat and light, life blossoms. And if this temperature goes a little higher, which we are talking today, the whole life can vanish. If it goes a little lower, life can vanish. So it creates life, sustains life through the journey of the earth, seasons, new things blossom, new possibilities emerge, and eventually life can even dissolve. So sun is the symbol of the creator. So this is how he says, first I give it to the sun. Of course, this sun is not the material sun, but sun at every level, sun as the center of creation. And in the technical language, it's the Vigyanmaya or the supermind, where this yoga, divine establishes, that is the seat of yoga. Because yoga is required once the creation begins. That's the place from where the seeds of creation are released. So there the yoga is placed. So from Vivaswan, where does it go? It goes to the solar dynasty. So there are kings who guarded the yoga. In the Indian context, we know that these kings of the solar dynasty were Suryavanshis, who were basically the ancestors of Rama. And it starts with Ikshvaku. So Ikshvaku is the person who has been given the yoga by the sun. That okay, you have to conduct things according to the law of truth. So he receives the yoga, and it goes on, right down to Sri Ram, and then it gets lost. So Sri Krishna says it gets lost over a period of time, and then it continues through some saints and sages. Then Sri Krishna is giving it again to Arjuna. So he says it's the original yoga which has been given to man, and there are as many paths as there are the rays of the sun. Literally, that's what is meant by Swami Vivekananda's statement, that a time will come when every person will have his own religion. And that is the state of divine anarchy dreamed of by some. Not this anarchy, again divine communism, not this communism. So all these terms have their origin there, but they are misunderstood here. So then, to discover the Creator, to join with Him is yoga. Now, there are many things which come under the name of yoga. Each is, in a way, has its own benefits. The least it does is, the least first step in yoga is this consciousness which is completely identified in the body and mind must first be released from it, because you can't direct it anywhere. So how it is tied to the body? Through the sense objects, we just spoke about it. Through the senses it's going outside, and then the mind further ties it. Why? Because mind is constantly dwelling upon these very sense objects. So whatever we see every day, whatever we hear, all that is registered somewhere, and in sleep, body rests for a while, but the mind continues. So therefore it keeps moving on the objects of the senses. And then when we wake up, depending on what objects and what, it does enter for a short while into what is known as a dreamless sleep. So every day our consciousness, which is otherwise tied to the external world, withdraws from the senses into the mind, and from the mind it withdraws into what the Gita calls as the great self. The Gita speaks of this entire reversal of movement. And then for few moments it spends there and comes back rejuvenated. So this, from the yogic standpoint, this is the purpose of sleep. This is what happens in everybody normally, naturally. But for if some reason the mind is too much preoccupied, agitated, restless, anxious, depressed, then it cannot, the consciousness is so badly fixed that it cannot withdraw sufficiently to touch this core. And that's where we see that sleep disturbances leading to illnesses, various kinds of breakdown, because that rejuvenating factor which comes by touching that great self is missing. So this is the first background. So then basically, if yoga is to join with the divine, first is to release the consciousness from this bodily trap and the trap of the mind. These are the two, the senses and the body and the mind. And there is a connecting link, which is the life energy. Shabinda speaks of it as the isthmus. So it is tied by these three bonds. One is the bond of the body. It is the toughest bond, very difficult to release consciousness when it is tied to the body. Unless one practices equanimity in the physical, we will see invariably that people sit for meditation and there is a fly, there is something, there is a fly in the mind, there is a fly outside in the air. And so it doesn't let us get freed from the body. We'll see that people become so restless. They are sitting, and after some time in the beginning they'll see that the legs begin to shake. So to just teach the body to stay still, this is one of the basic things. Of course, higher practices of yoga, it happens spontaneously. But these are few trainings by which asana, to be able to hold the body in a certain posture for a sufficient time. This is the basic requirement, because if it is constantly agitated and restless, we cannot release the consciousness from that agitated physical nature. So, one is this. Then in each yogic system, we will see there are practices which help the consciousness get released from the boundary. So in Hatha Yoga, it is the body. So body becomes the means of release of consciousness out of this trap door. It's not that it enters into freedom and forgets the body. It's always tied to the body. But fundamentally now consciousness is available to engage in yoga. So how do we release from the body? Well, according to the science of Ayurveda, according to the science of yoga, there are several spots within the body which are there for the consciousness to be released into the subtle domains. And those spots are called marmas. So marmas are those specific points through which the universal is entering in, like currents into the system. So we can say there are points from which, through which the stream of life can enter into the sea. So these marmas, we know that this was a whole science we have forgotten. Of course, people who practice martial arts know about this, and in Ayurveda people know about this, and Kalaripattu and all these. There is a whole science where you hit at a marma sthal, and also acupressure where you press at a marma sthal. But in yoga, it's not used for this purposes, but by different postures, you will see that there is a point which is stressed. And that point which is stressed is the point through which the consciousness is meant to escape. And there are many such points, so many such asanas, and through each asana, consciously done with a conscious thought that it is not done only for physical exercise, because will is the crucial element. If the will is I just want to be healthy, then consciousness will operate. The operating system is that I just want to be healthy. But if the will is that I am doing this practice with the attitude and the will that I want to realize union with the divine, then we'll see the results are very different. Because then even a single asana, we don't have to do many asanas for a long time, but even a single asana tends to release the consciousness, because will and faith are the two most important elements in the human system. So once it is released, then you can play around with. So there are partial yogas and there are complete yogas. When consciousness begins to get released from the grip of the body, it enters into subtle domains. There are siddhis which come as a result of that, and people may stop there, and that's a partial yoga. Where the yoga's actual aim of freedom from ignorance, joining the creator, is not achieved. One enters into mostly the vital worlds where we have these ashta siddhis. We hear in Hanumanji's tale, Ashta Siddhi Navanidhi Ke Data. So these are the treasures which we discover inside, and some yogis, power can corrupt you, it can even aggrandize you, it can make you very egoistic. So that's why if preliminary purification is not there and one enters into these, it is very dangerous. So we see many of these Hatha Yogas was practiced by the Rakshasic and Asuric kind of human beings. Standing on one leg for hours and all this. But in some it helped, like Dhruv. Certainly Dhruv practiced Hatha Yoga. And we see that Dhruv could attain the divine. But in many others, like Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha, it led to an aggrandization of the ego. Because they got powers and they were lost in the glamour of power. Not that power is bad, but certainly limited power, which is limited from the infinite point of view, but much more from the human point of view, can be very dangerous. Because you immediately start controlling human beings, start controlling the elements of creation, like Ravan did, and therefore it can lead to an imbalance in creation. When it is said that Ravan captured the 9 grahas, so basically it means that he had such powers. Mother speaks of Theo, who could divert the lightning. And she says, I have seen it with my own eyes. And though mother had all these powers, she would very rarely use it. Sometimes she would keep the rain away if it was necessary. But at one point she told her disciples, when they were praying that, Mother, let there be no rain today, she said, it's not good to interfere with these elements. Why? Because it creates an imbalance in creation. So this kind of use of powers or misuse of powers, they can be used. They should be used under the dictate of the divine for a divine purpose. Supposing you see that there are dark forces which are obstructing a certain kind of work, then these powers can be used. All great yogis use it. But they should not be used as in the flow of ambition to prove a point or to become a guru, to rule over human beings. That is where the danger lies. So this is Hatha Yoga, where through the practice of asanas, and almost every Hatha Yoga also uses pranayam, because the two are interconnected. And some Hatha Yogas also use bandhas and mudras, through which the Kundalini Yoga, or the awakening of this power, not only through these pores, but from the base of the spine, where in material consciousness it is there. The divine power is hidden even in the most material consciousness. In the human body, it is represented by the system of chakras, by the first chakra, or the Mooladhar. That's why it's called, is the base from which everything emerges. In Kundalini Yoga, this process is what is used as the most important predominant element. Again, release of consciousness step by step until it passes through that one gate in the city and enters into the infinite. So this is the yoga where body is primarily involved. In Raj Yoga, it is primarily the mind. So here the premise is that consciousness is involved in the body, true, but in human beings it's mainly centered in the mind. Mana Prana Sharir Neta. So how to do it? So it starts basically from mind control. So we see in Patanjali system, asana, pranayam occupying a very limited place. And the whole thing goes about mind control before and mind control after. Earlier, mind control through practice of certain kind of austerity. Later, by fixing the consciousness on one object. This one object can be a name, it could be a form of the divine, it could be a mantra, it could be an image, doesn't matter. It could be the highest object which the yogis recommended was Om. I was a bit surprised that, Om has been dropped out of the yogic syllabus. Okay, it's understandable that, it's an age of secular thing, but Om is like the key. So you will have health benefit, but the key is required to open the door, which is what yoga is about. If we don't open the doors to the Creator in some way, or at least to the higher worlds, then the real aim is not fulfilled. So without that, yes, we can do these exercises. That's a different story altogether. In Raj Yoga, it is involved in the mind, and there is mind control. And by controlling the mind and its energies which are rushing out in 100 objects of the senses, mind has its own powers. These powers begin to get released in a Raj Yogi. So there is Ishita, Vashita, whatever you desire, that gets fulfilled. It's not necessarily instant gratification, but subsequently. Many people, that book, Whatever You Wish Will Be Fulfilled, I don't know, The Secret or something. It's very risky, because we are not here to just fulfill our desires from the yogic standpoint. But it's true that by controlling the mind, it can become so powerful that if it desires, it's not like a person who is desiring everything and therefore it will work out. But if one has acquired a reasonable mastery of the mind, then it's very potent. And if such a mind desires, we see such stories in the lore, in the Puranas, and many stories of seers and yogis, then the power of the mind goes and brings that object. Another siddhi is Vashita. Vashita is actually, it's almost like Sammohan. It brings people into your control. So there are some of these yogis who do that. That's why we see these yogis who want to expand their empire. They get into this mode. So very often people ask, why in Sri Aurobindo's yoga we don't have so many disciples? It's because Sri Aurobindo does not use those methods. He had all these siddhis and nidhis. He went way beyond, but he doesn't use these methods to keep people. He gives a fundamental freedom even to his own disciples. He doesn't hold them by the powers, vasita. Then there is vyapti. So in vyapti, your thought gets broadcasted into the whole universe. Then there is equally knowing the thoughts of others. So these are the siddhis which come through Raj Yoga. Through Hatha Yoga, it's Lagima, Garima, Anima, Mahima, Anima. So we have already spoken about these things earlier. And it's not so necessary to dwell upon it. So in Raj Yoga, the method is that for every negative movement of the mind, we substitute it by a positive movement. So for hatred, we substitute by love, very consciously. We don't respond to hate by hate. If somebody has done something not very kind to you, you respond with kindness and forgiveness. So it trains the mind first to that dark lower movement is substituted by a more beautiful movement. In Buddhist yoga, it is used. In Raj yoga, it is used. Even in Sri Aurobindo's yoga, Sri Aurobindo, the mother speaks about it, how to cure evil. And there she says, gives one of this method is this method. So when the mind is trained and it becomes subtle, because it's no more dense and gross, indulging in gross movements. So when it becomes subtle enough, then its energies and its consciousness can be released, and then it can be directed through dharana and dhyan towards samadhi. Samadhi is a state where one joins the divine. And ordinarily, one stays in that state for some time. If the body is there, one has to come back, because otherwise the cord will snap. Some yogis use it as the ultimate departure, but others go just to create a kind of opening with that other half, the road to the creator. It's open. So this is one way. The third part is there are partial yogas and complete yogas. So partial yogas give us one glimpse of the infinite through a curtain. So what is meant is that divine is infinite. So you can't label him only as this or that. He is everything and transcends all that. But so long as we are still caught up within the universal movement, we see him either as impersonal, or we see him as personal, or we see him as the immobile Brahman, or we see him as the Ishvara. Many ways we can, there are many experiences. Again, we see the Ishvara himself reflected in one of the forms, in Shiva, Krishna, Brahma. There also we can see them in their original forms and glories, or lower down. So there are partial yogas which give us a one-sided partial glimpse. So somebody, let us say, sees the divine as Shiva, and usually Shiva on the lower, lesser planes, will make a cult of Shiva, which will be in contradiction to the cult of Vishnu. Somebody may see the Vishnu aspect as the divine and may miss out as the creator and miss out on the Shiva aspect. That's why in the higher conceptions of yoga, we have the conception of Harihar, the Tridev, in which all three fuse and they go beyond. So these are partial glimpses. Complete glimpses where we have the complete vision of the divine. The only place where it's beautifully described is the Gita. That's why Shri Krishna uses the word Samagram Mam. Divine who transcends creation, divine who is in the universe, and the divine who is in each element of creation. This is taking yoga to a completely new level, different level. So not only are we freed from ignorance and discover the hidden self, the true self, the creator within us, but we also discover the creator and his workings in the cosmos. And we discover the creator in his transcendent poise. All three poises one must discover for the completeness of the realization. But what about finally joining the creation with the creator? Because I may discover all this in my essential self. Here just a note may be needed. In this city of 9 gates, who is the manager? We know the owner is the divine self, the true self. But the manager is usually the mind, which is a construct of nature. And that's why it is called as ego. It's a construct. Or in some people, it may not be the mind, it may be the emotional center. In still others, it may be the navel. That's what it is said, that in Ravan, the comb of immortality, he was drawing his strength from the navel area. We see these sumo wrestlers, many of them. So there are spots within at which the ego can locate itself. There are some people who are always located in the belly. So they will say things, that's why it's called as the underbelly. Or not even the belly, but the underbelly. So the ego is a construct of nature. By putting a stress on this or that part predominantly, it creates a type of variety of human being. But let us hope and assume that most human beings, through the process of evolution, are largely centered in the mind and mainly in the rational mind. But that rational mind, which we think is the me, is not me, it is only the manager. The owner is the true self. That's how the Gita describes. So to meet the true self, we have seen this process of withdrawing from creation, pratyahar, fixing the consciousness onto that one single mantra, idea, form, image, until the door opens and there is a joining of the creator with the creation. But it leaves one question unsolved. And the question is, what about this is also creation? I am not the only fellow in the creation. And what is joined? The soul, which was always belonging to the divine. So here we see that Sri Aurobindo comes in and says, no, this, instead of merging in the creator, the soul in man can stand on the threshold of the merger and invoke the higher forces, the higher powers, the higher wisdom, the higher bliss, the higher love, the wideness, the beatitude, to enter into creation first through a human vessel, and in the human vessel, the body, brain, different systems, heart, the vital energy, and then through the human vessel radiate upon this entire earth in all that is around and through each other to the entire creation. So if there are sufficient number of people who are engaged in this process, so first reversal is from creation to the creator. There is a second reversal from the creator after joining back to the creation, but now bringing the unlimited into the limited, the infinite into the finite, the eternal into the play of time. So this completes the whole cycle. Yoga started with creation, and it cannot end by abruptly souls departing through a door of moksha out of creation. That would be absurd. It is completed by this creation itself becoming divine. It is limited right now because there have to be steps and stages. And through steps and stages of evolution, it is going toward that great culmination. That's why there are steps and stages. Each stage, it must stabilize whatever energy is relevant or valid for that stage. And after stabilizing, it must go next step further, because otherwise the whole creation can come tumbling down if one tries to make haste. That's why yoga has to be done with a lot of patience, steadiness, perseverance at every level. Steadiness of faith, steadiness of will and aspiration. And if one tries to hurry, there is every chance that one will slip down. It's not done by an impatient mind, impatient person with a doubting, hesitating mind. So because why? Because immediate results do not come. I'm talking now about the higher results. This is bound to take time. This is the whole process. And therefore, from the yogic perspective, all evolution is a manifestation. So science, material science explains the material side of evolution. Explains, rather documents it. It doesn't explain really. They are theories, but they don't explain. The yogic science explains the inner side of evolution. So all evolution is for the emergence of new forms which can manifest greater and greater possibilities of the divine, which who is beyond, within, around everything. Greater and greater possibility, and these possibilities are infinite. So step by step, evolution, through evolution, nature helps in the evolutionary process, and within it there is a will which is engaged in the yoga secretly, and therefore better and higher forms of manifestation take place. And these better and higher forms have to be understood not in terms of survival, but something much better. There is a very interesting story about it. A story is about, not about it, but we can use it. So there was a man, I'm forgetting his name, who was an expert swimmer and very kind and compassionate person. So one day in a jungle, he saw that in a river a tiger was drowning. So he was filled with compassion. So it's a real story. So he entered into the cold current, swam to save the tiger. Now see, for the tiger, it is predatory instinct. Actually, it was not drowning. Tigers are expert swimmers. It was trying to hold a deer, but in the river it was unable to do so. This man didn't realize, he thought he's doing a great deed to save the tiger, and as he approached, suddenly the tiger realized that I have a better prey. So he let go of the deer and started swimming towards this man. Being an expert swimmer, he came out. But it shows the two different approaches. One is the approach of the predatory instinct. So this survival theory which came is largely because when we see the animals, life is affirming itself. Therefore survival. But in human beings, this survival is already accomplished by the operation of the mental intelligence which operated in this man. He understood that I have compassion, but the tiger has only fear and rage and hunger. So in human beings, there is the possibility of a conscious evolution. So not survival. In human beings, the goalpost changes, and that is conscious evolution from the animal-like survival instinct to a more rational, to a more compassionate, kind, sympathetic, loving, wise, courageous human being, and etc., etc. And from that, it can grow still further towards a greater divine consummation of our human self and a divine consummation of creation itself. So this would complete the whole circle. In this scheme, man becomes a bridge between the creator and the creation. Without this bridge, whatever schemes may be do, now we come back to the United Nations Yoga Day. You may try whatever schemes one may, but it is not going to change things because man remains the same. So, interestingly, in 1960, I think the Secretary General of the United Nations was Youthant, if I am not mistaken. Anyways, whoever was the Secretary General, he made a remark, interesting remark, again, after the supramental manifestation. He made a remark that, well, if a new world order can be accomplished, if world unity can be accomplished by changing human beings, we must find a way of changing human beings. And this remark was conveyed to the mother, and he says he is very receptive. So you see, again in United Nations, though we know that much of it is still hypocrisy but a seed has entered there. So right now we are practicing yoga, thanks to both the Indian Prime Minister and the United Nations, but we are actually practicing not yoga but asanas. But the word has become common, acceptable. But as always happens, that humanity first catches the husk and then it reaches the kernel. You don't straight away by some magic extract the grain of gold from the wheat plant. You first, take out the husk because you can't see that grain. So let us hope that in this process there would be some people all over the world, and of course the political sphere, which is the most resisting, who will one day go beyond the asanas and the breathing exercises and even the techniques of meditation, and they will want to have the grain of gold. And the more this kind of humanity develops in our midst, who use, again we are using the word yoga, not in the yogic sense, but only to make their body and mind fit. And imagine as an aside how dangerous it can be if you have a strong body and a strong mind, but the consciousness is still dwarf. The Rakshasas and Asuras of old practiced yoga of this kind. They actually practiced yoga asanas. So always it should be accompanied by something greater. So in that process we also have not only the yoga, thanks to Krishna for reminding us, because we had started with Krishna. Other than the yoga, the Raj Yoga, which starts from the mind, we have the Trimarg, the yoga of Shri Krishna of the Gita, which starts from another ground, from the inner being. So we have the physical yoga, heart yoga, we have the yoga which comes from the mind, the Raj Yoga, we have the Trimarg which starts from the inner being. It takes human emotions, human thought and human will, and again by purification and concentration and renunciation of all that is not necessary, it arrives at the doors of the Creator. And then Sri Aurobindo's yoga, which is, Sri Aurobindo has used it as a Adhyatma Yoga, because it starts from a still higher ground. It starts from that higher ground where one takes that the soul is involved in the mind, but discovers it, and from that point the real journey begins. So we have these different kinds of yogas and many, many others, many brands of yoga. That's a different story altogether. But its ultimate goal, as Shri Krishna says, that he gave the yoga to create this world. Through yoga he creates and sustains the world, and through yoga he seeks to transform the world into some image of the original divine truth, which is hidden elsewhere, which we are searching unconsciously. And when we search it unconsciously, then it is subconscious yoga. But when we seek it consciously, then it becomes conscious yoga. When we seek it only for an individual release, freedom from this whole city, this body of suffering and pain, then it becomes a selfish yoga, if I may use the word. But when we seek it to become the bridge between the higher, the divine reality, and this world which needs it to change into something divine, then we engage in the completest possible utility of yoga and the entire fullness of yoga, which comes when man, the individual, connecting with the Creator, extends this yoga not only for his own sake, but into the entire human race, and through the human race into the entire creation. This is the great vision that Sri Aurobindo has placed before us. And let us hope and pray that on this day, as years roll by, human beings will awaken to this wider vision, vaster vision. Sri Aurobindo said that only 100 men are required who can be of pure gold. This is always the initial breakthrough, which is the difficult part. Once that breakthrough takes place, it has a cascading effect. So let us hope that we have completed 99 and there is just that one person which is the tipping point. May each one of us be that one person. Thank you.